Highlights in the career of Lois Lane. No character in the entire Superman family has been featured more often with the Man of Steel than girl reporter Lois Lane. To celebrate the 100th issue of her own magazine, we present a rundown of the most important stories and issues that marked the great events in her life, together with full information about her life up to 1970. Lois Lane number 26, July 1961, told of Lois Lane's childhood. She was born in Pittsdale, the elder daughter of Sam and Ella Lane. In this story, baby Kal-El, the future Superman, unknowingly saved Lois's life for the first time when a toy of his, which was in one of his father's experimental rockets, went from the planet Krypton to Earth and frightened a deadly snake which was about to strike at Lois. More about her childhood was told in Lois Lane number 71, January 1967. Clark Kent learned Lois had been a straight-A student who had won Girl Scout honours and had captured the titles Miss Ideal Girl and Queen of Perfection in local contests. Adventure number 261, June 1959, told how Lois first met Lana Lang at Camp Hiawatha one summer and how for the first time Lois met Superboy. Adventure number 128, May 1948, revealed how Clark Kent met Lois Lane. The teenage Clark and Lois were winners of the Daily Planet's contest to honour the best school newspaper reporters. As a prize, they worked at the Planet as cub reporters for 1 week. At that time, the editor was a man named Morton. Lois Lane's college scoops were featured in Lois Lane number 55, February 1965. Lois attended Raleigh College, where Pete Ross, Superman's best friend, also studied. In Lois Lane number 17, May 1960, the story of how Lois Lane got her job was first told. It turned out that Superman had unwittingly helped her get the scoops that convinced Perry White to hire her. Lois was already working at the Planet, or as it was then called, the Daily Star, when Clark Kent was hired in the very first Superman story, Action number 1, June 1938, reprinted in Superman number 1, summer 1939. Curiously, in the early Superman stories, Perry White was called George Taylor. Ever wonder how Lois Lane fell in love with Superman? That was revealed in Lois Lane number 53, November 1964. It seems Lois never cared for the Man of Might at first. Then when he had been robbed of his powers temporarily by red kryptonite, Lois got a look at the man instead of the superhero, and he won her heart. Man or Superman was the title of the first story in which Lois suspected Clark Kent might be Superman. Up to that time, a connection between timid Clark and the mighty Metropolis Marvel had never occurred to her. But when Clark had to come up with a rather flimsy excuse to explain how he scooped her on a story, Lois became suspicious, and that suspicion has grown since. This tale appeared in Superman number 17, July-August 1942. Superman number 28, May-June 1944, was the first magazine to feature Lois in a story of her own. This series, Lois Lane Girl Reporter, ran through number 42, missing only one issue, number 41. Lois met the adult Lana in Superman number 68, January-February 1951. Superboy's former girlfriend wasn't yet making a play for Superman, however. Showcase number 9, July-August 1957, was the first all-Lois issue of any magazine and the first tryout for the Lois Lane mag. If it hadn't done well, you wouldn't be reading this 100th issue today. The mag had one other important influence on Lois's history. Lana Lang entered the Superman marriage sweepstakes against Lois for the first time formally. Showcase number 10 was another all-Lois issue. The sales were great, the reader response was enthusiastic, and so Lois Lane number 1 came along, dated March-April 1968. In the 99 issues that have followed, Lois's faithful fans have never wavered in their devotion to her. Lana returned to the scene in Lois Lane number 7, February 1959, to become a regular in Lois's mag. It was in this story that Lois found Lana down and out and helped her. Earlier in the showcase story, Lana had shown interest in getting a job as a TV announcer. In later stories, she became a top news reporter for station WMET-TV. Incidentally, Lois herself never knew how her rivalry with Lana actually began. In Superboy number 90, July 1961, Lana had seen the future briefly in an experimental time viewer, which burned out after a few minutes. But she had witnessed Superman kissing the grown Lois, so Lana set out to change destiny so that Lois would not become the Man of Steel's girl. You can read how she made out in the next giant Superboy, in which the story is reprinted. Lois herself later attempted to alter destiny when she used a time machine invented by Professor Potter to go back to Smallville before Lana fell for Superboy in an attempt to prevent it. But her try was doomed to failure, for everything turned out as fate had ordained. Lana played the Sleeping Beauty in a Christmas pageant, and Superboy as the prince kissed her. That first kiss was the bud of love for Lana. This story was published in Lois Lane number 50, July 1964. Lois met another hero in Lois Lane number 12, October 1959, when she was temporarily turned into a mermaid and was courted by Aquaman long before he met and married Mira. The transformation was done to save Lois's life after her legs were crushed in an accident. It took super surgery to get her back to the life on land she loved, and only Superman could do it. But first he had to absorb all the knowledge in a huge medical library in a few minutes, so he could pass a test and be awarded an MD degree. Lois Lane number 13, November 1959, was the issue that introduced Lois Lane's parents, Sam and Ella Lane, to our readers, and to Superman. An overheard remark blossomed into a rumour that grew till it was completely out of control, and nearly forced Superman and Lois Lane into a marriage for which neither was prepared. Another member of Lois's family debuted in Jimmy Olsen number 36, April 1959. This was of course Lucy Lane, Lois Lane's sister. Jimmy fell for the lovely airline stewardess, but learned she had promised her mother not to marry before Lois did. This condition has been lifted since, and Jimmy and Lucy have been mighty close to wedded bliss on at least 2 occasions. Which reminds us, did you ever hear of Susie, who was introduced as Lois's niece in Action number 68, December 1943? Susie had a remarkable way of bending the truth out of shape and coming up with the wildest stories. What's more, she actually got Superman to make some of those fibs come true. However, since Lois has no brothers and her one sister is unmarried, it's obvious Susie can't be her niece. Actually, Susie's mother is Lois's first cousin. Lois got some secret aid from Supergirl in her campaign to become Mrs. Superman in Lois Lane number 14, January 1969. Yet Lois never knew about her secret helper, whose existence on Earth had not yet been publicly revealed. Needless to say, the Maid of Might flopped this time. Lois Lane number 15, February 1960, introduced the super family of Steel. In this novel, the first full-length story in Lois Lane, Van Zee, a Superman lookalike from the bottle city of Kandor, met, courted and wed Sylvia DeWitt, who was Lois's double. Then he gave Sylvia a serum which gave her superpowers under a yellow sun. But Van Zee and Sylvia now live in Kandor under an artificial red sun, where neither they nor their children have any superpowers. In Lois Lane number 17, May 1960, Brainiac set up a little game it seemed Superman couldn't possibly win. The villainous computer in human form had a device which could destroy Earth. At a specific time, he was to mentally order Lois and Lana to a spot where a bomb was planted and timed to go off when they got there. Superman had to be away from Earth and his robots were forbidden to interfere. Under these circumstances, if the girls survived, Brainiac agreed to spare Earth. Compelled to go along with the scheme because Brainiac was protected by his force shield belt, Superman arranged to give the girls transfusions of his super blood to make them temporarily super and thus invulnerable to harm. What? You wonder how Superman could give a transfusion when his skin is impenetrable? Simple, he made the incision with his own super hard fingernail. It was in this story that Superman gave Lois and Lana the super outfits they later wore in the battle between Super Lois and Super Lana, Lois Lane number 21, November 1960. A tale which is recalled in this issue's lead story. With Lois Lane number 19, August 1960, we introduced a new innovation to the Superman line with the publication of our first imaginary story, Mr. and Mrs. Superman Kent. In this and subsequent stories, we have shown the happiness and heartache that might come to Lois and Superman if they marry. Lois borrowed Jimmy Olsen's elastic serum, which turns him into Elastic Lad, and did the 10 feats of Elastic Glass in Lois Lane number 23, February 1961. But most important in Lois's life, although she didn't know it, were the feats she performed at Midvale Orphanage, where one of the orphans she met was Linda Lee, now Linda Danvers, Supergirl's alter ego. That same issue introduced another character to the Superman family. This was Lena Forrell, the beautiful blonde who didn't know she's a sister of Superman's arch-enemy Lex Luthor. Luthor has often gone to great lengths to conceal from Lena the truth about her brother. She believes he was killed in an accident when she was just a tot, and doesn't know her parents changed their name from Luthor after their son turned criminal. Lois is one of the few persons in on the secret. Lena later became a friend of Supergirl. She is married now and has a son. One of the strangest developments in the entire Lois saga occurred in Lois Lane number 41, May 1963. It was Superman's romance with Lana Lane. This girl was Lois and Lana merged temporarily into one person by a magical duel. Lois's work as a volunteer nurse was first revealed in Lois Lane number 43, August 1963. Lois has had full nurse's training and is qualified to work as a registered nurse, which she actually has done at times. Our gal ran for the Senate in Lois Lane number 62, January 1966, and her opponent was Superman, while her campaign manager was that fifth-dimensional imp, Mr. Mxyzptlk. In the end, both candidates were disqualified because of legal technicalities. The governor then appointed Perry White as interim senator until a special election could be called. For a while, the planet had a new editor, Van Benson, who was secretly an FBI operative on a case in Metropolis. Later, Perry returned to the planet and he lost the special Senate election. The big change in Lois Lane came in issues 80 and 81, January and February 1968. She changed her whole image, walked out on Superman, left Metropolis and went to another city, where she got a job as a nurse. But later, when a weird accident gave her temporary telepathic powers, she read Superman's mind and found out that he really loved her. And although she went back to the planet, the Lois of today is in many ways a far cry from the Lois of only a few years ago. What does the future hold for Lois? Will she marry Superman? And if so, when? Will she learn that he's Clark Kent? What surprises does fate have in store for Lana Lang? What unforeseen influences will enter the lives of both girls and Superman? Keep your eyes peeled for the answers in future issues of this magazine.